So welcome to the first episode of our series, a deep dive into the Navajo creation story. And as I mentioned last week, my hope is that you can hear this story, share this story, and maybe, most importantly, think differently because of this story. Okay, it's time to enter the first world. This world is not like ours, not at all. Think misty, think watery, think darkness, and picture life floating. Not walking, not talking, but floating. Life is soft, it's silent, it's holy. Oh, and here's a tip for navigating these worlds. I'll drop some clues for you, some hints, some tips to help you understand this story better. These clues will only appear in the podcast version. So, if you're watching the video, pause, rewind. If you're listening to the podcast, keep going. Here's your clue. When you hear the word above, that's the direction we're going. Up, toward the light, toward the next world. Got it? Good. So as we move up, sometimes we leave something behind. Sometimes someone behind. But for now, let's keep moving. In the beginning of this first world, there was no solid ground, only a sea of blackness surrounded by mist. There were no birds singing, no flowers blooming, no butterflies dancing. There was no wind whispering secrets, no leaves rustling. There was no sound. There was only stillness. And within this stillness, there existed 6 sacred beings. 4 were gods. 1 was a woman, and the 6th was a man. Together, they were connected by a profound love and unity, a bond so deep it echoed the harmony of the universe. Their days were filled with contemplation. Their nights were spent in reflection. And their existence was a testament to the beauty of simplicity. But soon, a shift occurred. The tranquility of their world was disrupted by an unsettling sound. The unsettling sound of change. The gods turned to each other, their faces etched with concern. Why, they wondered, had their harmonious world been disturbed? As they pondered, a decision took shape, a decision born out of love, respect, and unity. They would send the woman and the man to explore beyond their familiar realm. Eager to understand the source of the disturbance, the couple prepared for their journey. The gods bestowed upon them blessings, equipping them with the knowledge and understanding necessary to navigate the unknown. And so, hand in hand, they ventured forth into the vast expanse of the endless black world. Now, as they journeyed, a mystery unfolded. They discovered that the sounds they had heard were not merely random occurrences. There were signs pointing towards new possibilities, new experiences, new worlds. And thus began their ascent above, a journey guided by the very essence of change itself. The couple moved upward, leaving behind the familiar depths of the black world, Their ascent was a physical manifestation of their evolving spirits. With each step, they shed layers of ignorance, revealing truths that illuminated their path. And as they continued their journey, they encountered the changing woman. She emerged from the mist, her form shifting and evolving just as their world was doing. The changing woman was a symbol of transformation, a reminder that change, when embraced, can lead to growth and understanding. Recognizing the significance of their encounter, the couple paid homage to the changing woman. They acknowledged her role in their lives and in the grand scheme of their journey. And as a token of their respect and gratitude, they offered her a prayer and a blessing. And so the changing woman watched them ascend above into the ever-changing landscape of the second world. Now, as they journeyed further, they came across a vast canyon, a chasm that seemed to stretch endlessly before them. On the far side, they saw the silhouette of a mountain reaching up towards the heavens. And between that mountain and themselves lay a river so wide it appeared as a shimmering ribbon of silver against the backdrop of gray. Now this river wasn't just a geographical feature. It was a challenge, a test of their resilience and determination. It was here that the hero of their tale emerged. He was neither a god nor ordinary man. He was a blend of both, a spiritual leader destined to play a pivotal role in their journey. Seeing the daunting river before them, the hero didn't hesitate. He waded into the icy waters without a moment's delay. Each step he took was a declaration of his strength and purpose. And as he walked, he began to sing. His song carried on the current, weaving tales of bravery, resilience, and hope. Now, as the hero navigated the challenges of the river, the man and the woman stood on the shore, watching him with admiration and respect. They recognized the courage it took to face such a daunting task head-on. As the hero approached the opposite bank, his song growing louder with each step, a curious sight unfolded. The river seemed to part for him, creating a path that allowed him to continue his journey. Safe and sound, standing on the far shore, the hero paused to catch his breath. The weight of his journey thus far pressed heavily on him. Yet, despite the fatigue that tugged at his limbs, he knew he couldn't rest. The river was no longer a challenge. It was a memory, a stepping stone on his path to understanding. As the hero stood there, catching his breath, the man and the woman approached him. Their steps were lighter now, their spirits lifted by the hero's bravery. They had witnessed firsthand the power of determination and courage. And as they reached the hero, a sense of camaraderie settled among them. They shared stories, laughter, and dreams, forging a bond that transcended the physical realm. Then, with renewed energy, they continued their journey above, into the third world. In this world, the skies were painted in hues of blue, stretching endlessly above them. Lush vegetation carpeted the land, dotted with sparkling streams and vibrant flowers. Majestic mountains pierced the clouds, their peaks adorned with glistening snow. And as the trio moved further into this world, they saw its inhabitants, the tall, fair-skinned beings with long hair and a deep connection to nature. These beings lived in harmony with their surroundings, their lives deeply intertwined with the rhythms of the earth. They welcomed the newcomers with open arms, sharing their knowledge and traditions without reservation. However, as the days turned into weeks, a disquieting change began to sweep across the land. Plants withered, animals migrated, and the very essence of the world seemed to be in turmoil. A palpable fear settled over the inhabitants of the third world. They felt powerless as the world they knew slipped away from them. Sensing the growing despair, the man, the woman, and the hero decided to intervene. They sought out the changing woman once more. Her presence, like a beacon of hope, offered solace in the midst of the unfolding chaos. Upon hearing their tale, the changing woman revealed the source of the world's distress. A great flood, she explained, was on its way, threatening to engulf everything in its path. It was a natural disaster of immense proportions, a test of endurance and survival. Facing this imminent peril, the man, the woman, and the hero knew they had to act swiftly. They rallied the inhabitants of the third world, organizing a massive effort to prepare for the impending flood. Homes were reinforced, supplies were gathered, and evacuation plans were devised. As the floodwaters began to rise, the world transformed into a raging sea. Homes were inundated, landscapes were reshaped, and the very foundations of their world were shaken. The trio watched from a safe haven as the floodwaters swelled, carrying away everything in their path. After what felt like an eternity, the waters began to recede. The flood had passed, leaving behind a world that was unrecognizable. Amidst the wreckage and despair, the trio set out to assess the damage and offer support to the survivors. The once vibrant world was now a scene of devastation. Homes were destroyed, crops were washed away, and the survivors were scattered and disheartened. The trio, undeterred by the grim scene, began the arduous task of helping the survivors rebuild their lives. They distributed supplies, provided medical aid, and most importantly, offered words of encouragement and solidarity. As the survivors slowly began to piece their lives back together, the trio knew that their work was far from over. The flood had taken a heavy toll on everyone, and the road to recovery was long and arduous. So they stayed, offering their support and guidance until the third world began to heal. Now, this is where we end this episode. And before we sign off, I want to invite you to a special event. Next week, we'll have a live chat after the video is released. It's a chance for us to discuss the story together, to ask questions, to share insights, and maybe even learn something new. And if you have any thoughts, ideas, or experiences related to the Navajo creation story, bring them along. We'd love to hear from you. Until then, let the story resonate within you, and we'll catch you next time. We are going on a journey today. A journey back to the very start, back to the moment when the world as we know it took its first shaky breath. We'll meet characters whose names echo with power and mystery, places that hold the secrets of existence itself, and stories that shaped everything that came after. Now, before we dive in, I have to warn you, this isn't your average adventure. This is the story of creation. And that means the rules are different. Things won't always make sense. Time moves differently. And some mysteries, well, they're meant to remain unsolved. But if you're ready to let go of logic and lean into the rhythm of the universe, then come with me. Let's start at the start. Okay, so here's what you need to understand. In many, many stories around the world, whenever someone tells a tale of creation, there's often more than one world involved. Sometimes it's 2, sometimes 3, sometimes 7 or 13. The number can vary, but the pattern is always the same. Each world has its own rules, its own challenges, and its own meaning. These aren't just places, they're levels in a cosmic game. Each one testing, teaching, preparing. And today, we're focusing on the first 3. The first world, which might also be called the spiritual world or the dream world. The second world, also known as the underworld or the land of the dead. And the third world, which is basically our world, the world of the living. Now, some stories blend these worlds together, making them overlap or transform into one another. Other stories keep them completely separate, but in every single one, there's a connection, a path, a bridge between them. And understanding how these worlds work and how they connect is key to understanding, well, everything. So let's begin, not with light or life or land, but with something quieter, something still, something ancient. The first world, called Nihodilhil, or the Black World, was not a world of forests or oceans, or even mountains or stars. No birds sang here, no rivers moved, and the sun had not yet been born. It was the beginning of beginnings, a place that existed before form, before noise, before the idea of color. A world made entirely of soft, swirling mist and deep darkness, stretching out in every direction like a dream that hasn't yet taken shape. There was no up or down, no real sky, no real ground. just a soft, floating space, like a breath that never ends. A world between worlds. And inside that darkness, within that formless mist, lived the holy people. Sacred beings, both mysterious and powerful. Not quite human. Not quite anything we could easily explain. Among them were first man and first woman, two of the very first figures in this creation journey. And although they didn't walk or talk like we do now, they were filled with the essence of life, wisdom, and the potential to create a world. Someday. They weren't alone. There were other spirit beings too, some in the shape of insects, some with faces like the wind, others that flickered in and out like sparks in the dark. Each one carried a piece of something larger, an idea, a force, a fragment of future harmony. Now, for a while, this strange little world of mist and silence held its own kind of peace. Not happiness, exactly, but calm. A quiet that lasted for what might have been years, or centuries, or no time at all. Because, in the black world, time didn't tick. It waited. But as more and more spirit beings came into being, something changed. The stillness began to crack just a little. Tiny disagreements began to stir like ripples on still water. It started with misunderstandings. Nothing loud, nothing violent, just little sparks of conflict. Beings began to question each other. Some grew jealous. Others behaved in ways that upset the balance of things. There was, for instance, the issue of inappropriate relations. Certain beings mingling with others in ways that were unquite right for that early, sacred space. Yes, even in the oldest world of all, there was already just a hint of mischief, a shadow of disharmony. Even the very first spirits had to learn how to live together. The holy people, wise and watchful, saw what was happening and understood that this world, beautiful as it had been in its own quiet way, could no longer support the life and energy that had begun to grow within it. The balance had tipped. The lesson had been learned. It was time to move forward, to leave behind the soft black mist and rise into something new. But leaving wasn't simple. There wasn't exactly a door with a big glowing exit sign. There was only the sense that another world waited above, a brighter world, with more space and more shape, if they could just find a way to reach it. So, the beings began to search. They sent messengers in every direction through the mists and winds, looking for an opening. A passage, some kind of way up. Eventually, they found it. A tiny opening. A slender reed that pierced the ceiling of the black world like a needle through fabric. And beyond that reed, the next world. But the journey upward wasn't just about squeezing through a hole. There were rules, boundaries, guardians. The beings of the black world had to ask permission from those above. They had to explain why they needed to leave, what had gone wrong, and how they hoped to do better. They had to show respect and the desire to learn. And once that permission was granted, the beings began to rise, slowly, carefully, one by one, climbing upward through the reed, leaving behind the black world and its dark, misty silence. And so, the first world faded into memory, not as a place of failure, but as the first stepping stone, a kind of sacred classroom where the earliest lessons were learned, about harmony, about limits, about the consequences of chaos. It was not perfect, but it was necessary, because creation didn't start with perfection. It started with effort, with choices, with beings trying to figure out how to live together and not always getting it right. It started with mistakes and with movement, and sometimes that's all we need to begin. Okay? So picture this. You've just climbed out of a dark, foggy place into a world of bright sunshine and open sky. It's a huge change, right? Well, imagine if, as you're taking in this new world, someone leans over and whispers, "Hey, look around you. Enjoy the sunshine while you can, because soon you're gonna be back in that fog. And until you get out of here, you're gonna face some seriously tricky challenges." That's basically what happens in the second world. The beings step out of the black world, full of hope and excitement for this new place, only to realize that their journey isn't over. In fact, they've only reached the halfway point. And before they can really settle into the land of light, they have to face another test, another challenge. Now, depending on the story, these tests can take all kinds of shapes. Sometimes they're physical, like having to cross a dangerous river or climb a tall mountain. Other times, they're more like riddles or puzzles that the beings have to solve. But whatever the form, they all serve the same purpose. They're meant to push the beings, to force them to dig deeper inside themselves, to bring out the best and worst of who they are. They're meant to show just how far these beings are willing to go. And the results, well, they're messy. They can be brave, cunning, resourceful, patient. But they can also be jealous, greedy, selfish, cruel. In other words, they're human. And that's by design. The second world isn't just a test. It's also a teacher. It pushes the beings to reveal their true colors so that they and we can learn what it truly means to be alive. It's a harsh lesson, but it's a necessary one, because without this world, without this struggle, there's no way to create the kind of world the beings are looking for. So as the beings struggle, fight, grow, fail, succeed, they're shaping not just themselves, but the very ground beneath their feet. And when they finally emerge on the other side of their trials, they're different, stronger, wiser, more capable. They carry the scars of their struggles, but they also carry the strength that comes from overcoming. And with that strength, they create the third world, the world of the living. Now, sometimes this world is perfect. Sometimes it's peaceful. Sometimes it's beautiful. It's filled with challenges and changes and chances. Basically, it's a lot like our world. And that's no accident. Section 3. The second world. Blue world. The blue world. A brighter place. With new troubles. As the sacred beings rose through the reed and left the black world behind. They didn't know exactly what they were heading into, but they trusted. They believed there was something better waiting above, something clearer, wider, maybe even kinder. And when they stepped into this next place, the second world, known as the blue world, or Nihodootl'izh, they found just that, at least at first. This world was bigger than the one before. It was lighter, bluer, filled with soft skies and gentle glows, and more space to stretch and breathe. Imagine the difference between a stuffy room and a wide open plain with fresh morning air. That's kind of what it felt like. There were no forests yet, no mountains or rivers, but things were definitely taking shape. There were creatures here too, more formed than in the first world, and many of them had wings and feathers. This was the land of bluebirds, blue jays, and other bird beings, each with their own sense of pride, order, and boundaries. They weren't just flapping around randomly either. No, the second world had its own rules and its own guardians. And these bird beings weren't exactly thrilled to have visitors dropping in, uninvited, from another world. So when the holy people, first man, first woman, and the others arrived through the reed, they had to do something very important. Ask permission again. You see, even though these were powerful, sacred beings, they couldn't just barge in like they owned the place. There were spiritual laws here, and one of the most important ones was respect for space. For those who came before, and for the balance of all things. So first man and first woman, with humility and care, approached the guardians of the blue world. They explained what had happened down below, how things had fallen out of harmony, how the black world had become too troubled to stay. They asked to settle here, to live and grow and build in peace. And the bird guardians, cautious but curious, agreed. But they had one condition. Don't bring your old problems with you. This was a fresh start, a chance to do things right. And for a little while, everything went smoothly. The holy people explored this world with wonder. They met new beings, creatures shaped like insects and animals, each with their own teachings and their own songs. They discovered more about how to live in harmony, how to respect one another's space, how to listen to the world around them. In the blue world, communication wasn't just talking. It was humming, flapping, shining. Everything had its own rhythm and way of expressing itself. And slowly, the new arrivals began to learn. But, as you might guess by now, peace didn't last forever. At some point, and no one knows exactly when, the same old patterns started to show up. The tiniest cracks in the harmony. Little disagreements, jealousies, flirtations, arguments over where to live, who had the right to what, and even, believe it or not, over colors again. Yeah, turns out colors were a big deal in these early worlds. They weren't just for decoration. They held power. Each color belonged to a direction, a purpose, a meaning. And when someone misused a color, wore the wrong one, claimed it as their own, it caused spiritual imbalance. And in a world held together by balance, that's a big deal. One of the more mischievous spirits in the story also begins to show himself more clearly. Here, Coyote. Now, Coyote hadn't made much trouble in the first world, but here in the blue world, he starts doing what coyotes do best, stirring things up. He didn't always break rules to hurt anyone. Sometimes he just wanted to see what would happen, and that kind of curiosity, while entertaining, can really throw a world off balance if you're not careful. Coyote would steal, tease, lie, laugh, and while his actions often led to problems, they also brought lessons. You might even say, Coyote was the universe's way of reminding everyone, nothing stays perfect forever, and you'd better be ready to adapt. So eventually, the blue world began to feel tense. The bird guardians, who had once welcomed the newcomers, grew frustrated. They warned them, "You said you'd do better this time, but the same problems are returning. The balance is shifting again. This world isn't meant to hold all this conflict." And once again, it became clear to the holy people they had to leave. Not because they were being kicked out exactly, but because this world, like the last, had become too small for all that was unfolding. They had more to learn, more to become, more rising to do. And so, the holy people and their companions began to prepare for another journey. They searched once again for a way to move upward into a new world, one brighter and more complete than the blue world. They found another reed, another passage, and just like before, they had to ask permission. They had to be respectful. They had to show they'd grown, even just a little. And with permission granted, they rose. So, the second world, the blue world, faded behind them. It had offered its gifts, clarity, expansion, the first real steps toward understanding. But it had also reminded them that growth takes more than space. It takes patience, cooperation, and humility. And now they were ready to enter the next level of creation, the third world, known as the Yellow World, a place with land and water, a place with greater challenges, a place where one trick, one stolen child would nearly destroy everything. But we'll get to that. For now, rest easy. Let the blue sky of the second world float gently through your thoughts, like the wings of birds gliding through calm, open air. Section 4. The third world, Yellow World. The Yellow World, land. Lessons and a flood to remember and sow. The holy people, first man, first woman, and the many others who traveled with them, rose once again, climbing through the slender reed, lifting themselves from the airy, feather-filled skies of the blue world into something entirely new. What they found waiting for them above was the third world, a place they call Nihaltsoh, or the Yellow World. This world was brighter, more solid, more real. For the first time, there was land to walk on earth that held your weight instead of mist or clouds. There were rivers and lakes, mountains and valleys, and the soft, golden color of the world gave it a calm, glowing energy. It was warm, not hot, not cold, but comfortable, like waking up to the sun gently touching your face through a window. The beings that already lived here were different too. They were more grounded, more animal-like than those of the blue world. And once again, the holy people had to follow tradition. They needed to ask permission to stay. This time, the guardians were beings like big water creature, big snake, and other powerful animals of land and water. Each had its own voice, its own will, and each needed to be respected. The holy people explained again where they had come from and why they had left the blue world. They admitted their faults, shared what they had learned, and promised to live better. And the beings of the Yellow World, after some careful thought, agreed. They allowed the newcomers to settle, and just like that, the third world became their new home. But this world was more than just brighter and bigger. It was a training ground, a place of deeper lessons. Here, the holy people and the beings that followed them began to form the patterns of life more clearly. They started building homes. They chose sacred places. They began organizing themselves into families and groups, the early roots of what would one day become clans. And the creatures of this world, they were teachers. Some showed how to build, others taught how to hunt, to farm, to live in balance with earth and sky. The first true signs of a human-like world. And for a little while, it worked. Peace was possible. Harmony seemed within reach. The Yellow World was a golden promise, one step closer to perfection. But just like in the worlds before, imbalance found its way back in. And this time, it came with a trickster's tale. Coyote, he was back, more active than ever. And, as usual, he had a plan that no one had asked for. Among the most powerful spirits of the yellow world was Water Monster, a being who ruled the lakes and the deep waters. He was ancient and strong, and he had a child, a young water creature full of life and magic. And Coyote, in a moment of classic coyote behavior, decided to steal the water monster's child. No one really knows why. Or maybe, like so many of his actions, it was meant to shake the world awake, to remind people of the fragile balance they were walking. At first, no one noticed the child was missing. But Water Monster did. He thrashed through the lakes, stirred up the rivers, and before long, his anger boiled over into a storm like no one had ever seen. The waters began to rise. Rain poured down like the sky itself was crying. The flood had begun. The holy people panicked. They didn't know why this was happening. Not yet. They only knew they had to escape, so they gathered quickly. They called out to one another. They climbed to the highest places they could find. And as the water swallowed the world, they did the only thing they could. They reached for the sky. They found another reed, tall and strong, stretching toward the unknown. And once again, they had to ask for passage. But this time, time itself felt thinner. The waters were climbing fast. The reed swayed in the storm wind, and the world behind them, the golden, beautiful, yellow world, was sinking. Still, the holy people held onto their belief. They prayed, they sang, they climbed. As they rose, just before the final few stepped through the reed into the next world, someone stopped Coyote. They asked him, "Do you have anything with you that doesn't belong to you?" And with a sheepish look, somewhere between mischief and guilt, Coyote opened his blanket, and there, curled up and frightened, was the water monster's child. He had taken it with him all this time, even while the world drowned. They returned the child to its father, and slowly the waters began to fall. But it was too late. The yellow world had been destroyed, swept away by a flood of sorrow and imbalance, all because one trickster spirit had to see what would happen if he took something that wasn't his. So what does the yellow world teach us? That even when we build something golden and good, even when we find balance and beauty, all of it can be washed away in an instant if we forget respect, honesty, and humility. The world doesn't need much to tip out of balance. Just one selfish act. Just one secret. Just one coyote. But still, the journey wasn't over. The holy people had survived. They had learned, painfully, but they had learned. and ahead of them was something new. A world more complete than any before. A world with seasons, with stars, with mountains placed in sacred directions. The world we live in now, the glittering world. Sleep well, traveler. The flood has passed, and tomorrow we walk into the world of light. We'll get to more of the story in future episodes, but there are some parts of the book we have to mention today. So let's start the show. Narrator. When the floodwaters from the yellow world finally calmed, and the reed had carried the holy people through one more narrow doorway, they found themselves stepping into something truly different. Something brighter, more vivid, more alive than anything they'd ever known. This new place, the fourth world, is called Nihalgai, which means the glittering world. And this world, unlike the ones before it, was not a halfway place. It wasn't a classroom or a spiritual waiting room. This world, ... was complete. It had real land beneath the feet. Crisp winds brushing across open spaces. The sun glowed above with warmth, and the moon rose quietly behind it, bringing cool nights with a sky full of stars that looked like beads scattered on velvet. This was not just a world to pass through. This was the world to stay in, to build in, to live in. This was our world. The holy people arrived tired, not just physically, but in spirit. They had traveled through darkness, through rising water, through moments of harmony and moments of collapse. They had tried, failed, tried again. They had watched their worlds rise and fall like waves in a great ocean of learning. But now, here, in this place of light and form, they knew they had reached a destination. Not the end of their journey, exactly, but the beginning of a new kind of living. This was the world where beauty and hardship would walk side by side, where growth would no longer come from jumping between worlds, but from planting your feet, staying put, and learning to thrive through the seasons. The holy people got to work. They began shaping this world with ceremony, with song, and with intention. They placed sacred mountains at the four corners of their land, each representing a direction, a color, a time of day, a teaching. To the east, they set Blanca Peak in Colorado, white, glowing with the first light of dawn. To the south, they set Mount Taylor in New Mexico, blue, soft, with midday heat. To the west, they placed the San Francisco Peaks in Arizona, yellow, touched by sunset. And to the north, they set Mount Hesperus in Colorado again, black, deep, and cool like the midnight sky. These four mountains weren't just boundaries. They were protectors, guides. They created a sacred space, a homeland, not just of land, but of spirit. Inside this land, the people would live. And not just exist, but live with purpose. That S, when the holy people began to shape clans, Groups of families connected by shared identity, each tied to a story, an origin, a gift. Each clan had a role. Some were born from the water, others from the mud, the wind, or the rock. And through these clans, people knew who they were, who they came from, and who they were responsible to. This system of kinship wasn't just about blood. It was about balance. No one stood alone. Everyone was connected. But life in the glittering world wasn't meant to be easy. It was real. It had joy, yes, laughter, love, birth, community. But it also had struggle, pain, loss, sickness, mistakes. So, the holy people didn't just give tools for survival. They gave ceremonies, ways to heal, ways to restore what might be broken, ways to bring a person or a family or even a whole community back into Hózhó, that beautiful harmony of mind, body, and spirit. One of the most important ceremonies they shared was called the Blessing Way, a sacred path of beauty, a ceremony of creation, of setting things right, of helping a person walk forward into their life with confidence and grace. It was during one of these ceremonies that the holy people revealed one of the greatest gifts they brought from the other worlds, the medicine wheel. Do you remember the medicine wheel from the red world? Well, here in the glittering world, it was given form. Each direction, each color, each season, each part of a human life was blessed and honored, each step of the way. And so the Navajo people could live. They could grow food. They could sing songs. They could tell stories. They could raise families. They could be joyful. They could grieve. They could dream. And they could heal. But even in this world, as complete and beautiful as it is, the lessons aren't over. There will be battles. There will be monsters. There will be decisions to make, paths to choose, and tricksters who still like to stir the pot. The holy people knew that perfection isn't the goal. Balance is. To fall out of harmony isn't failure. It's an invitation to return, to come back into rhythm, to be real, to be human, to keep walking. And that's what the glittering world gave us. Not paradise, but a place where we could learn to become. We want to take a second to talk about this idea of balance. In many spiritual traditions, the concept of balance is really important. Like in Buddhism, there's the idea of the middle way. This is the path that helps you avoid extremes. Or in Christianity, Jesus talked about being the light of the world. One of the ways he showed us how to be the light of the world is to be balanced. We're told to store up treasure in heaven, but also to use what we have on earth wisely. There's always a push and pull. And when we think about the story of humanity, the same thing is true. We move forward, but then we have to come back and refine what we've learned. The Bible talks about this cycle of sin and redemption. Sometimes people stray away from God, and sometimes people come back to God. Sometimes we turn away from the teachings, and sometimes we find our way back. It's not about being perfect. It's about learning and growing and changing. When we see the emergent story in this way, we can understand that the fourth world isn't perfect, but it's the best we've got. It's ours, and we're responsible for it. We can't blame the old people for not getting it right the first time. We can't blame the next generation for having problems. This is our world, and we have the responsibility to keep it thriving. But we're not doing this alone. The holy people are still with us, guiding us. And we have everything we need to keep moving forward. In Navajo culture, the word for thank you is a very powerful word. It's not just a polite phrase. It's an acknowledgement of the fact that everything we have comes from the generosity of others. Even the simplest things, like the food we eat or the clothes we wear, they come from the hard work of farmers, weavers, teachers, parents, and so many others. So when someone does something good for you, saying thank you is more than just a polite thing to do. It's a way of honoring the connection between people, recognizing that we all depend on each other in so many ways. It's a reminder that none of us are truly alone. In a world where everything seems to be fast and disposable, taking the time to say thank you is a powerful statement. It shows that you see the value in things and in the people around you. It makes the world a little better, one thank you at a time. If you liked this episode, please hit subscribe. Check out our social media for more content. And leave a comment below with your thoughts on the episode or questions you have about the next one. See you soon. Section 6. The role of the holy people, guides, creators, and keepers of balance. The holy people, the ones who whispered the world into being now that we've stepped fully into the glittering world. The world of light and earth, of days and seasons, of songs that echo across canyons and stories written in the stars. We need to pause for a moment and turn our attention toward the ones who made all of this possible. They are not distant rulers sitting on golden thrones in faraway heavens. No, they are something both simpler and far more intimate. They are the holy people, or, in language, the Diné, Dayang, sacred beings who helped guide, shape, protect, and teach during the long journey from the earliest world of mist to the solid ground of this one. They are still here, even now, not in the way you might see with your eyes, but in the hush of the wind, the flicker of the fire, the rhythm of the drum, and the lessons passed from elder to child. They are a presence, quiet and steady, walking alongside the people, always just beyond the edge of sight. Among the holy people, you'll meet names that sound more like ideas than individuals, because that's exactly what they are. There is first man and first woman, who appeared in the black world and walked through every world that followed, always helping to bring order to the chaos and acting as spiritual leaders wherever they went. They didn't just survive the journey. They helped shape it. They stood for structure, for ritual, for the sacred way things ought to be done. When a fire needed building, when a ceremony needed leading, when people needed guidance, first man and first woman were there. Then there's changing woman, and oh, she is something special. She wasn't born in the first worlds like the others. She came later, formed of light and water and mountain mist, shaped by the forces of creation in the glittering world itself. She represents fertility, renewal, and the eternal cycle of life. Changing woman is the mother of all life, the one who gave birth to the hero twins, and from her came the clans of the people. She is the reason the world has beauty, the reason the flowers bloom again after winter, the reason that sorrow never has the final word. She changes, yes, but always in a sacred rhythm. She is the heartbeat of the earth. There is also Talking God, who serves as the voice of wisdom, a being of language and ceremony and thought. When it's time to say something important, to make an offering, to speak into the silence, it is Talking God who leads. He is the one who speaks during rituals, who reminds the people of their place in the universe, who gives shape to invisible truths. If ever you feel words come to you out of nowhere, just the right ones, just at the right time, maybe it's him. And then there is Black God, the one who brought the stars. He walked quietly into the darkness of the fourth world, carrying a blanket of constellations. And when the people looked up, he flung them into the sky. Each star had a place, a pattern, a purpose. And though the others told him to take his time, to plan it out carefully, Black God knew better. Sometimes creation needs boldness. So he scattered the stars across the heavens in a rush of light. And suddenly, the night sky had meaning. Even now, when you look up at night, you're looking at his gift. There are more. Monster Slayer and Born for Water, the hero twins, sons of changing woman, who later faced the monsters that plagued the people. We'll talk more about them later. They deserve their own story. Each of these sacred figures brought something different, a lesson, a gift, a tool, and none of them stood alone. That's how it's supposed to be. No single being, no single person, no single idea can carry the whole world on its back. But together, in balance, in harmony, in shared responsibility, a universe can be born. And more importantly, it can last. But the holy people didn't just shape the physical world. They gave the people a way to walk in it. They didn't hand down commandments or rigid laws. They shared ceremonies, chants, stories, and most of all, a sense of rhythm. A way to be in step with the land, with the seasons, with one another. The holy people showed that beauty is not just in nature. It is in the way you treat others. It's in the care you take when you wake up each morning. It's in the songs you sing when planting corn, or the way you speak to the rain when it falls. They taught that the sacred is everywhere if you're just quiet enough to see it. So even now, when a child hears the stories of creation, they're not just being entertained, they're being rooted, taught how to walk in a world that is alive, shimmering, speaking. And the holy people, they're not gone, they're just in the background, watching, whispering, waiting to be remembered. When a ceremony is held and the sacred songs, they come close. When someone gets sick and the chants are said to bring them back into balance, they are near. And when a child is born and the wind sings softly through the sagebrush, you can feel them. Still here, still walking with the people. Music slows, steady and warm like a low campfire crackle. So, as you rest your eyes and let your breathing settle, remember this: the holy people aren't somewhere far away. They're here, in the land, in the wind, in the memory of your footsteps. And tomorrow we'll hear how the world, now whole and glittering, needed protection from something dark, something ancient, something monstrous. But don't worry, help is already on the way. Section 7. The Hero Twins and the Slaying of Monsters. The twins who fought the darkness that the glittering world had taken shape. Now that the land had settled and the mountains stood tall at the four corners, and people had begun to live in balance with the rhythm of the sky and the breath of the earth. You might think, all right, the hard part is over. But no, not quite yet. Because even in a world as beautiful as this one, even with sacred mountains and the guidance of the holy people, there were still things that didn't belong. Creatures that lurked, forces that disrupted the harmony, beings that fed on fear and confusion. These were the monsters. Now, the monsters weren't just big, hairy beasts hiding in caves or chasing people through canyons. No, these monsters were symbolic too. They represented dangers of many kinds: fear, hunger, sickness, jealousy, anger, greed, violence, all the things that can throw a person, a family, or an entire world out of Hózhó. That deep Navajo sense of balance, beauty, and peace. They came into the world because, long ago, when the holy people were shaping things, spirits were born from pain, from death, from unnatural things. And some of those spirits, instead of fading away, grew into creatures of darkness. They roamed the world freely, bringing harm to anyone who crossed their path. And the people were scared. They couldn't plant. They couldn't raise children. They couldn't even sleep without fear creeping into their homes. They needed help. They needed heroes. And that's where the hero twins come in. They were not ordinary children. They were the sons of changing woman, the powerful being of life and renewal we met earlier. Their names were Monster, Slayer, and Born for Water. And yes, those names are pretty cool, because they were born with a mission written into their spirits. But before they could take on the monsters, the twins needed to understand who they were. You see, they didn't grow up knowing the full truth about or their father. And like many young people, they had questions, big ones, like, where did we come from? Why are we different? Why is the world like this? So one day, the twins decided to go searching. They told their mother they needed answers. They wanted to find their father, even though they didn't know who he was. They just felt he was out there, somewhere in the sky. Changing woman, though worried, understood. She gave them her blessing, packed sacred items to protect them, and sent them on their way. And so the twins began their journey. They crossed deserts and rivers, climbed cliffs, and walked through places full of danger and beauty. They were tested, not just by beasts, but by the land itself. And after a long journey, they reached the house of the sun. That's right, the actual sun. Because, you see, the twins weren't just asking questions for fun. They had a real mission to defeat the monsters that tormented the people. And only their father, the sun, could give them the weapons and teachings they would need to succeed. At first, the sun was unsure. He didn't believe these boys were really his children. He challenged them, tested their courage and their cleverness. He tried to trick them, just a little, to see if they were truly strong enough, inside and out. But the twins passed every test. They stood tall. They were patient. They were humble, but fearless. Eventually, the sun accepted the truth. Yes, these were his sons, and they were ready. So the sun gave them gifts, not toys or gold or anything flashy. He gave them sacred weapons, tools filled with spiritual power. They weren't meant for destruction. They were meant to restore balance. Armed with those gifts, the twins returned to the glittering world, not as boys on a quest, but as warriors of harmony. And they got to work. They went one by one, tracking the monsters across the land. Some of these creatures were huge, with claws and teeth. Others were more like shadows, slippery and sneaky, hiding in fear and lies. But no matter what form they took, the twins didn't stop. They faced every danger. They listened to every teaching. And slowly, they began to bring peace back to the world. The most famous of the monsters they faced was Nihaltsoh, a terrifying, giant being who towered over mountains and could crush whole villages with his fists. But even Nihaltsoh was no match for Monster Slayer's courage and Born for Water's courage. Wisdom, they trapped the monster with strategy and spirit. And when the final blow came, it wasn't just a victory of strength. It was a lesson that even the most terrifying force can be overcome with the right tools and with faith in what is good. But the twins didn't destroy all the monsters. Some they let live, especially those that had a purpose. Pain, after all, teaches. Sorrow makes us cherish joy. Hunger makes us respect the harvest. Even fear has its place when it keeps us safe from danger. So instead of erasing everything bad, the twins helped put things back where they belonged. They brought balance. They restored Hózhó, and ever since then, the story of the hero twins has lived on. Not as a bedtime story to scare children, but as a guide, a reminder that the world is beautiful and dangerous, that each of us has monsters to face, outside and sometimes inside, and that no matter how big those monsters seem, there is always a path, always a way forward, always a twin spirit deep within us, ready to rise. So tonight, as you rest, remember, you come from a world that has been shaped by love, protected by sacred hands, and guarded by heroes who didn't give up. You carry the strength of those stories in your bones. And whatever monster you may face, you are not alone. Section 8. Sacred Mountains and the Navajo Homeland. Now that the monsters were gone, or at least returned to their proper places, and the hero twins had walked back into the hills with the dust of victory on their shoulders, it was time for something gentler, not quieter, exactly, but something more rooted, more lasting. You see, for all the courage and battles and journeys the holy people had gone through, they still needed to settle, to draw a circle in the sand and say, "This is where life will grow. This is home." And so, in the wide open beauty of the fourth world, the glittering world, the holy people chose for sacred places, not just nice hills or high ridges. These were mountains, grand, grounded, ancient, set at the edges of the world like cornerstones, holding up the sky. These 4 mountains didn't just exist. They were placed on purpose, with meaning, and they became the spiritual boundary of the Navajo homeland. To the east, where the sun rises and new beginnings are born, they placed Sis, also known as Blanca Peak, in what is now Colorado. It is white, covered in snow and early light. It glows with the energy of birth and clarity. This mountain stands for the start of things, for thinking, planning, and remembering who you are before you act. To the south, they placed Sioux, Mount Taylor, in New Mexico. It is blue, wrapped in the warm breath of mid-morning. It holds the energy of youth, of action, of movement. This is the time of the day when we work, when we sweat, when we get things done. The mountain stands for strength, for growing, for walking your path with purpose. To the west, they set Nihodootl'izh, the San Francisco Peaks in Arizona. This mountain is yellow, filled with the colors of the setting sun. It stands for reflection, for maturity, for looking back and seeing what the day has taught you. It is the time of evening when stories are shared and peace settles over the land. A place of wisdom, of community, of gratitude. And to the north, they placed Nihaltsoh, Mount Hesperus, again in Colorado. This mountain is black, wrapped in the mystery of night, but not scary, not lonely. It's a place of deep knowing, of dreams, of rest. It represents the elder years, the winter season, and the wisdom that only comes after a long walk through life. It teaches you to be still, to listen, to accept. Together, these four mountains form a sacred boundary, not like a fence, more like a circle of protection, a home that breathes with the rhythm of the sun. Inside that circle, the Navajo people, the wood, live, grow, sing, and pray. And not just physically, spiritually, too. Every ceremony, every story, every song is connected to those mountains. When you greet the dawn, you're calling to Sis. When you gather firewood under the setting sun, you're walking with Nihodootl'izh. When you close your eyes at night and hear the hush of snow outside, that Nihaltsoh whispering, rest now, you've done enough. These mountains aren't just rocks and soil. They are alive. Not in a cartoon way. They don't talk out loud or walk around, but in a spiritual way. They hold prayers. They hear songs. They echo back the emotions of the people who live among them. And they're not alone. They'll also recognize other sacred mountains, smaller ones in different directions, tied to different ceremonies, each with its own role in the great circle of life. But the big four, those are the heart. And so, the holy people gave more than just land. They gave meaning to space. They made sure that every part of life, from childhood to old age, from sunrise to starlight, had its own place, its own time, its own mountain. Not by fences or walls or signs, but by placing spirit into the land, by treating every hill like an elder, every canyon like a song, every tree like a teacher. And that's what the Navajo homeland became, a sacred geography, not just a map, a prayer. But of course, the land wasn't the only thing being shaped. With the mountains in place, and the people now protected, the next question came naturally. How do we live together? How do we raise families? How do we love, grow, and pass on what we know? That's where the idea of clans began to grow. But that's a story for tomorrow. For now, just rest. Let your mind walk the path between those four sacred peaks. Feel the snow of the east, the sun of the south, the golden light of the west, and the cool, quiet night of the north. You are held. You are home. Section 9. Clan System and Kinship in Navajo Life. We are all related. How clans keep the circle strong. Now that the mountains stood in their sacred places, and the land was steady beneath the people's feet. Now that the monsters had been defeated or returned to their shadows, and the hero twins had fulfilled their purpose. The world, the fourth world, the glittering world, was ready for its next great gift. The people, not just scattered families here and there, but something stronger, more connected, a way to live together across time, across miles, across lifetimes. And so, the holy people, with great care and love, gave the something that would guide them for generations. The clan system. Now, a clan is more than just a last name or a family tree. It's not just who your parents were or where your house is. No, in Navajo life, a clan is a spiritual identity, a thread in the web of existence. Something that ties you not only to your ancestors, but to every other living person. It's like this. You, Dan T, just belong to your family. You belong to a network, a community, a legacy. When someone introduces themselves in the Navajo way, they don't just say their name, they say their 4 clans. It sounds something like this. I am born to the Bitter Water Clan, and born for the Towering House Clan. My maternal grandfather's clan is the Salt Clan, and my paternal grandfather's clan is the Water's Edge Clan. It's more than poetry, it's identity. And it tells everyone listening exactly who you are, and just as important, who you are not. The system goes like this. Your first clan is your mother's clan, because in Navajo tradition, descent is matrilineal. That means it follows the mother's line. You are born to your mother's clan. Your second clan, you are born for that one. And then your 2 grandfathers' clans follow. One from your mother's father, one from your father's father. Together, those 4 clans form your complete introduction, your sacred fingerprint. Why does this matter? Because in Navajo life, relationships are sacred. Knowing your clans means knowing how you are connected to someone else, whether they are family, friend, or stranger. It tells you how to behave, how to speak, and even how to love. That's right. Clans are used to prevent people from marrying too closely. If someone shares one of your first 2 clans, that's considered a close relative. And that means no romance allowed. It might seem strict, but it's about respecting lineage, protecting health, and honoring the spiritual threads that hold the people together. And there's another layer. Each clan has its own story, its own origin, its own strength. Some clans are named after landscapes, like Towering House, Water's Edge, or Bitter Water. Some after animals, One Who Walks Around, Bear People, Coyote Pass. Others carry the memory of migration, or sacred teachings brought from far-off places. When you carry a clan, you carry its history, its triumphs, its lessons, its responsibility. You're not just living your own life. You're carrying the hopes and prayers of generations. And in return, the clan carries you. In times of sickness, your clan surrounds you. In times of grief, your clan sings for you. In moments of joy, your clan celebrates with you. There is no stranger in the clan's system. Only relatives you haven't met yet. If someone tells you they are your mother because they belong to your mother's clan, you treat them with motherly respect. If someone is from your father's clan, they are father. It's not pretend, it's real. Because kinship isn't just biology, it's a way of walking in the world. Imagine that. A world where every new person you meet is already tied to you by story. Where every conversation begins with, "Who are your clans?" Where family is not just about who you live with, but about who you live for. And this system, ancient and flexible, is still alive today. Even now, children learn their clans early. Elders remind the young of where they came from. And when two people meet, they don't just shake hands. They look each other in the eye and say, "I see you. I know who you are." In this way, the clan system holds the culture together. It's a spiritual backbone, a safety net, a map, a mirror. And it isn't just about people, it's about balance. If the glittering world is to remain in harmony, then the people within it must also be in harmony. And harmony starts with relationships, with knowing your place, knowing your people, and knowing your story. So tonight, as you lay your head down to rest, think of this. Your story is not only yours, it is part of a braid woven by mothers, fathers, grandparents, and ancestors whose names you may never know, but whose blood sings in your breath. You are not alone. You are not lost. You are part of a clan, even if you can't name it yet. It knows you. Section 10. The meaning of Hózhó. Living in harmony. Walking in beauty. The Navajo way of balance. So far, we've journeyed through the 4 worlds. We've climbed reeds between realms, walked with the holy people, and stood beside the hero twins as they faced the monsters. We've circled the sacred mountains, learned the ways of the clans, and settled into the heart of the glittering world. But there is one idea, one teaching that holds all of this together. It runs under every story. It flows through every ceremony. It shapes every path, every choice, and every breath. This idea is called Hózhó, spoken softly, like the hush of wind over canyon stone. Hózhó. Now, Hózhó isn't just a word. It's not something you can translate with a single English sentence. It's not just peace or beauty or balance, though it holds all of those. Hózhó is more like a way of being, a way of seeing the world and your place in it. It's a worldview, a lifestyle, a spiritual compass that always points toward harmony. To live in Hózhó is to be in good relationship with everything: yourself, your family, your community, the land, the sky, the holy people, even the past and future. It means walking gently, speaking with kindness, listening deeply, doing things with respect, intention, and heart. It shows up in the smallest details: sweeping your home with care in the morning, greeting the sunrise with a prayer, pausing to admire a flower blooming from red earth, thanking the water before you drink, letting your words be soft when anger tries to rise. Hózhó reminds you, you are not separate. You are part of everything. And because of that, every choice you make sends ripples outward, like dropping a stone into a still lake. So the question becomes, are you bringing harmony? Or pulling things out of balance? Are your words bringing calm or confusion? Are your actions building or breaking? It's not about being perfect. It's about being mindful. Now, in the Navajo world, there are ceremonies specifically designed to restore Hózhó when it is lost. Because, yes, sometimes people get sick. Sometimes grief strikes. Sometimes the spirit becomes heavy. That's life, even in the glittering world. But they do not see illness or misfortune as punishment. They see it as a call to return, a message that something is out of place and it's time to restore the rhythm. That's when a medicine person is called. They use songs, prayers, herbs, sand paintings, and chants, not to cure in a Western way, but to realign, to bring the person back into balance with the universe. One of the most sacred of these is the Blessing Way ceremony. It's a celebration of life, health, and beauty. It welcomes new beginnings, like childbirth, a coming of age, or a long journey ahead. It strengthens the spirit. It doesn't just treat the body, it prepares the soul. Because to live in Hózhó isn't about avoiding pain. It's about returning to harmony again and again, no matter how many times life shakes you. And that is why so many Navajo teachings begin with this phrase: walk in beauty. Not just to look at beautiful things, but to walk in beauty, to live in it, to breathe it, to become it. Beauty isn't about decoration. It's about connection. It's how you treat your neighbors, how you honor the sunrise, how you feed the fire, how you pray, not just with words, but with how you live. To walk in beauty means your inside and outside match. Your heart is clean. Your thoughts are steady. Your footsteps leave peace behind. Let me share something gentle with you. A short version of a traditional Navajo beauty way prayer, often said at sunrise or sunset. In beauty, I walk. With beauty before me, I walk. With beauty behind me, I walk. With beauty above me, I walk. With beauty below me, I walk. With beauty all around me, I walk. It is finished in beauty. It is finished in beauty. Isn't that lovely? Not demanding, not forceful, just steady, peaceful, like a prayer wrapped in a whisper. So tonight, as you lay still, letting the world soften around you, let yourself be held by Hózhó. You don't have to do anything perfect. You don't have to solve all your problems tonight. Just breathe. Let your heart come back into rhythm with the world. The stars are in their places. The mountains are standing watch. The wind is singing through the sagebrush. And you, dear traveler, you are part of it all. Walk in beauty. Sleep in peace. Wake in Hózhó. Section 11. Navajo Ceremonies and Chants, Sacred Songs of the People. By now, you've felt it, that slow rhythm behind everything. That quiet pulse running through the glittering world. Through the stories of creation, the sacred mountains, the hero twins, the clans, and the path of Hózhó. But if you listen closely, there's something else rising behind it all. A sound older than language, more powerful than thunder, quieter than a breath. It's the sound of ceremony, of chants, of sacred songs passed down through memory, not written pages. You see, in Navajo life, healing doesn't come from pills or potions alone. It comes from sound, from pattern, from words spoken in the right way, at the right time, by the right person. And this is where ceremonies come in. There are dozens of ceremonies in Navajo culture, some small and personal, others so grand they last for 9 full nights under the moon and stars. Each one has a purpose. Each one a songbook older than any library. Each one a path back to Hózhó. These ceremonies aren't just rituals for show. They are living tools, spiritual instruments for restoring harmony when something goes wrong in a person's body, heart, mind, or spirit. You could think of them as medicine, not in the Western sense, but as a bridge, a way of realigning a person with the balance of the universe. There are 3 broad kinds of Navajo ceremonies: blessing ways, chant ways, and holy ways. Let's start with the blessing way. It's one of the most beautiful, celebrates life. It's used for protection, good fortune, safe journeys, childbirth, and coming-of-age transitions. It's sung when someone needs strength or when life is about to change. It is gentle, uplifting, a prayer whispered into the dawn. Imagine this: a young woman has her first womanhood ceremony. She's surrounded by family, community, food, and song. Her hair is tied back. She runs, not because someone's chasing her, but because it is tradition. It makes her strong. And all around her, voices sing, blessing way chants, to honor her, to guide her, to tell her, you are sacred, you belong here. Then there are the chant ways, more complex, and often used when someone is out of balance, spiritually, emotionally, or physically. These might be called when someone is sick, or troubled by dreams, or carrying a sadness they can't shake. There are dozens of these, each with its own story, its own chants, its own ceremony leader, known as a Hatui, or medicine person. You might have heard of the Nightway ceremony, one of the most sacred of all. It's the one where dancers wear yibuchai masks, becoming the holy people in form, voice, and step. They dance, chant, and bring the healing power of the gods to the people. This ceremony can last 9 nights, with songs, rituals, sweat lodges, sand paintings, and sacred stories told around the fire. 9 nights under the stars. 9 nights of walking back into balance. Then come the holy ways, ceremonies that are both protective and curative. They treat problems that come from spiritual imbalances. Maybe a taboo was broken. Maybe someone traveled somewhere sacred and came back off. Maybe a shadow followed them. Whatever it is, a holy way calls for power, focus, and precision. Each of these ceremonies is performed by a trained Hatui. Not just anyone can do it. It takes years, even decades, to learn the chants, because you can't just sing the words. You have to live them, understand them, feel them. There are hundreds of songs in a single ceremony, some chanted softly like a breeze, others booming like thunder over stone. Each line must be exact. Each beat must match the heartbeat of the earth. And then, of course, there's the art that goes with the chants, sand paintings. Now, if you're picturing a cute little drawing with colored grains, pause right there. These are sacred. They're made with cornmeal, pollen, crushed stone, and charcoal. Each color, each symbol placed by hand, carefully, with intention. A sand painting is not just art, it's a living map, a doorway, a place where the patient sits in the center, inside the story, inside the cosmos, surrounded by the holy people, by chants, by healing. And then, after the ceremony, the painting is swept away, because it was never meant to be kept. It was meant to do its work, then return to the earth. This is what makes Navajo ceremonies so unique. They are alive, built on memory, driven by sound, rooted in land, filled with ancient teachings that are not just preserved, but practiced, even now, even today. And through all of it, there's one constant: the voice, the chant, the sound of one person standing in balance, singing harmony back into being. When that voice rises, slow and steady, the world listens. The wind stills, the stars lean closer, and healing begins. So tonight, as you rest, imagine those chants, floating on the air like feathers, soft, powerful, wrapped around the soul like a warm blanket. You may not know the words. You don't have to. The earth does. The wind does. The old spirits do. Section 12. Traditional Navajo Life. The cycle of seasons and living with the land. The Navajo people, have always believed that the land isn't just where you live. It's not a background. It's not just scenery. It's part of you. You belong to the land, and the land, in its own quiet way, belongs to you. Everything in traditional Navajo life reflects that connection. Whether it's how a home is built, how food is gathered, or how a story is told. It's all woven into the rhythms of the natural world, especially the seasons. The changing times of year aren't just weather shifts. They're like chapters in a sacred calendar. Each one has its own responsibilities, its own lessons, its own mood. In spring, the world wakes up. After the long rest of winter, the soil begins to breathe again. Tiny green plants poke out of the earth. Snow melts in the mountains and trickles into the dry riverbeds. Families start to prepare their gardens. Corn is planted. Prayers are said. There is a sense of beginning, like a soft drumbeat starting up again after a long silence. Spring is the time of renewal. It's gentle. It reminds people to start slow, to be patient, and to listen closely. Then comes summer, and summer is busy. The days are long and warm, and the land bursts into life. Cornfields grow tall. Animals stir. Children play outside. Families gather herbs, tend sheep, and prepare for ceremonies. Work begins early in the day, before the heat becomes too strong, and then picks up again when the sun softens in the late afternoon. Summer is a time of action. It's filled with motion and color and energy. But even in the middle of all that work, there's always room for laughter. Summer teaches people how to keep going, but also how to enjoy the pace. After summer, things begin to slow down again. Autumn is harvest time. The sun still shines, but the wind is cooler now. The leaves turn golden. People gather crops, dry food for winter, and begin to reflect. It's a time of thankfulness. A time to look at what has grown, not just in the ground, but in life. Autumn is calm and thoughtful. It encourages people to take stock. What have you learned? What do you want to keep? What can you let go? And then, of course, there's winter. Winter is quiet, still. Cold winds sweep across the land, and snow dusts the mountains and mesas. The days are short. People stay indoors more. Families gather close. But winter isn't just about staying warm. It's about listening. Winter is the season of stories. The time when it is finally safe to tell the sacred tales. The ones about the hero twins, the monsters, the holy people, and the journeys between the worlds. Those stories are only told in the cold months, when the snakes are sleeping and the spirits are calm. In winter, storytelling becomes a ceremony. It's how knowledge is passed down. It's how children learn who they are and where they come from. Winter reminds everyone to be still, to pay attention, and to carry wisdom into the new year. That full cycle, spring, summer, autumn, winter, it repeats, always. And the people flow with it. They don't try to control the land. They live in rhythm with it. That rhythm shows up in everyday life, too. Take the traditional Navajo home, the hogan. It's round, like the shape of the sun or the path of the seasons. Its door always faces east to greet the first light of morning. Every part of its construction is intentional. It's not just shelter. It's a sacred space, a kind of small earth in itself, a reflection of the universe built with hands and heart. Or think about food. Corn, squash, beans. The three sisters are planted and harvested with ceremony. Water is collected with gratitude. When someone hunts, they speak to the spirit of the animal. When someone picks plants or gathers wood, they say a quiet thank you to the land. Even small acts like sweeping the floor or boiling herbs are done with a kind of reverence. It's all connected. The seasons also shape how people think about time. In many places, time feels like a straight line, always moving forward. But in Navajo tradition, time is more like a circle. Everything comes back around. What was planted will grow. What grows will be harvested. What's taken will be given back. The earth is always turning, and with each turn comes another chance to live in balance. It's a slower way of life, but not in a lazy sense. More like peaceful. Like there's no need to rush, because everything important will arrive in its time. The rain knows when to fall. The seeds know when to rise. And the heart knows when to rest. So much of traditional Navajo life teaches people to be content, not to want more than they need, not to take more than the land can give. When you live close to the earth, you learn that every moment matters. That quiet has power. That seasons teach just as much as books. That food, firewood, family, and a well-swept home are enough. And when things do go wrong, when someone gets sick or sad or off balance, the community turns to ceremony, to song, to old wisdom. Because even in the middle of difficulty, the land is still there. The seasons are still turning. And harmony is always possible again. So now, as you close your eyes and let yourself drift, imagine yourself walking that path from spring through winter. Hear the crunch of autumn leaves. Smell the summer rain. Feel the hush of snow outside your door. Know that no matter where you are in your own cycle, you are still part of something bigger. And the land remembers you. Section 13. Navajo Language and Oral Tradition. Speaking the world into being the Navajo language. Known as Bizad, is more than just words. It's more than vocabulary or grammar rules. For the Navajo people, language is part of creation itself. It's how the world was shaped. It's how knowledge is passed on. It's how the people stay connected, not only to each other, but to the land, the ancestors, and the holy people. In English, a word might point to a thing, tree, rock, river. But in Bizad, a word often describes what that thing does, how it moves, or how it relates to the world. Instead of calling something by its name alone, the language describes its life, how it breathes, changes, or grows. It's more active, more alive. It paints a picture that moves. This is why Bizad can be hard to translate. Some words don't have direct English equivalents. They carry meaning that's layered, spiritual, emotional, and physical all at once. A single phrase might hold a whole worldview, and yet, for generations, the language has survived. Not because it was written in books, but because it was spoken again and again from one person to the next. This is what's called an oral tradition. In Navajo life, knowledge isn't locked in writing. It lives in voices, in conversations by the fire, in stories told by grandparents, in songs and chants passed down with care. These aren't bedtime tales meant to entertain. They're teachings. They explain where the people come from, what is sacred, what is right, what to avoid, how to live. And the way these stories are told matters. You can't just blurt them out. A proper rhythm. Certain stories are only shared in winter. Some must be told in a specific order. The storyteller has to be respectful, focused, and careful, because the words carry power. In this way, speaking becomes a kind of responsibility. What you say matters. The way you say it matters. Words can bless. Words can harm. And once they're out, you can't pull them back. That's why elders often speak slowly. Why they pause before they answer. Why jokes are gentle and advice is thoughtful. It's not hesitation, it's care. Because language doesn't just describe the world, it shapes it. Now, think about how this works in daily life. When someone wakes up, they might greet the morning with a simple prayer. The words are quiet, but they set the tone for the day. When someone walks into a new space, they might speak a few lines to invite good energy. When a baby is born, there are songs. When someone passes away, there are chants. From the beginning of life to the end, Bizad holds people like a soft blanket. And during ceremonies, the language becomes even more important. Medicine people memorize hundreds, sometimes thousands of lines. Not because they're reciting poems, but because those words are tools. They guide the ceremony. They direct energy. They bring balance. If one word is off, the whole rhythm shifts. That's how finely tuned it is. Even in the chants, the sound of the word is part of its meaning. The vibration, the melody, the timing, everything has a place. Of course, over time, things have changed. The Navajo nation is large, and many people now speak both English and Navajo. Some younger generations are still learning. Others are relearning, finding their way back to the language after it was pushed aside in schools or homes. There was a time when children were punished for speaking Navajo in classrooms. A time when people were told to leave their words behind in order to fit in. But the language survived. Families kept speaking it at the dinner table. Elders whispered it during ceremonies. Medicine people kept singing it to the land. And now there's a new energy around it. Bizad classes are taught in schools. Apps and videos help people learn the basics. Grandparents sit with grandchildren and share words from their childhood. The language is still growing, still breathing, because even though it's old, it's not stuck in the past. It's alive and it's powerful. In fact, during World War II, Bizad became a secret weapon. The United States military needed a secure code, something the enemy couldn't crack. And so they turned to Navajo speakers. These young men, known as the Navajo code talkers, used their language to send messages across the battlefield. It worked. The code was never broken, and many believe it helped shorten the war. But for thee, the power of the language didn't come from secrecy. It came from meaning, from deep roots, from the fact that the language was born from the land and still carries its rhythm. So tonight, as you close your eyes and let your thoughts slow down, imagine that language moving gently through the air. Not loud, not rushed, just steady. Like wind moving through pine needles, like water making its way down a canyon wall. You don't have to know every word. You don't have to translate every sound. Just know that somewhere deep in the mountains or sitting by a fire, Someone is still speaking the old words, telling the old stories, keeping the world in balance, one sentence at a time. Because words, when used with care, can keep a whole people strong. Section 14. Resilience and Survival. The Long Walk and Navajo Strength. There are moments in every culture's history that leave a mark. Not just a line in a textbook, but a deep memory, one that lives in the stories, in the land, and in the hearts of the people. For the Navajo, one of those moments is something called the Long Walk. It happened in the 1860s, not very long ago when you think in terms of generations. At that time, Navajo families were living their traditional way, herding sheep, farming corn, praying to the rising sun, and following the cycle of seasons as they always had. But change was coming, and it came fast. The U.S. government had been expanding westward, and as settlers moved in, conflicts started to grow. The land that had always belonged to the Lye Desert plateaus, the winding canyons, the sacred mountains, became something others wanted to control. And so, in an effort to remove the Navajo from their homelands, the government made a decision that would change everything. Soldiers were sent in, entire communities were pushed out, homes were burned, sheep and crops were destroyed. Families had no time to gather belongings. The people were told they had to leave. And not just for a short time. They were being relocated far from everything they knew, to a place they'd never seen before. That journey, the forced relocation of over 10,000 Navajo men, women, and children, is what became known as the Long Walk. The name sounds simple, but what happened was not. They were marched hundreds of miles across open land, through winter winds, snowstorms, rivers, and desert plains. There were no cars, no warm jackets, no food stops. Many were sick, many were elderly, some were just small children. And yet, they had to keep walking. People were hungry, cold, tired. Some didn't survive. They were being taken to a place called Bosque Redondo in what is now eastern New Mexico. But it wasn't a home. It was a camp. The soil was poor. The water wasn't clean. There wasn't enough firewood. And the land, dry and unfamiliar. Couldn't he support the kind of life they had known? For several years, the people tried to live there, but it was hard. Many got sick. The crops failed. Their traditional ceremonies couldn't be practiced properly. The sacred mountains were gone. Their way of life, the harmony between land, spirit, and community had been broken. But even in that hard place, something incredible happened. They remembered the old songs. They spoke Bizod quietly by the fire. They prayed even when the stars looked unfamiliar. They told their children stories of home, so the land would not be forgotten, and they waited. Eventually, the truth became clear. Bosque Redondo was a failure. The U.S. government couldn't make it work, and even the soldiers admitted it wasn't sustainable. So in 1868, after years in exile, the Navajo people were allowed to return. A treaty was signed. It wasn't perfect, and it came with limits, but it allowed them to go home. And so they began another walk, not forced this time, but chosen. The people went back to their sacred mountains, to the canyons and rivers and wide skies they had always known. It wasn't easy. The land was damaged. Homes had to be rebuilt. But the connection to place, to culture, to ceremony, to one another was still strong. They began again. And that moment, the return became just as important as the exile. It wasn't just survival. It was a kind of rebirth. Today, when the story of the long walk is told, it isn't just about pain. It's about resilience. It's about a people who held on to their language, their beliefs, and their identity, even when everything was taken from them. It's about remembering who you are, even in the hardest times. Many Navajo families still carry stories from that time, not always written down, but passed from voice to voice. A great-grandmother's memory, a grandfather's quiet retelling. Each time the story is told, it becomes a reminder. We are still here. And you can see that resilience everywhere in the way youth learn their language, in the way ceremonies are still held under the stars, in the sheep grazing again on red hills, and in the prayers whispered to the morning sun. So tonight, as you rest and let the world slow down around you, remember this: you come from a long line of strength, from people who kept walking even when the path was uncertain, from stories that refused to be silenced, from songs that returned with a wind. The long walk was a wound, but the return was a promise that home, healing, and harmony are always worth holding on to. And no matter how far you are from where you started, there is always a path back. Section 15. The Navajo Today. Tradition, change, and a living culture. When people think of history, they often imagine something that's finished, something sealed away in old books or museums. But for the Navajo people, the history is still moving. It lives in the wind. It speaks through stories. It walks through modern homes and across red earth trails. It doesn't sit in the past. It breathes in the present. Today, the Navajo Nation is the largest tribal nation in the United States, not just in land, but in population too. The land stretches across Arizona, New Mexico, and Utah, with sacred mountains marking its edges and high desert plains running through its heart. Within this land are schools, hospitals, grocery stores, government buildings, homes, and holy places. Old and new, side by side, The people live modern lives, driving cars, using smartphones, attending college, running businesses, but they also carry with them traditions that go back thousands of years. In many Navajo homes, it's not unusual to see a modern kitchen and, just a few steps away, a loom for weaving, a laptop next to a bundle of cedar for prayer, a television in a room where Blessing Way songs are still sung. These things don't compete. They coexist, because tradition isn't about going backward. Many continue to speak the language, Bizod, teaching it to children and using it at home. Others are relearning, turning to classes and community programs that help restore what was once almost lost. Elders still share stories by heart, and younger people are finding new ways to preserve them, turning them into podcasts, short films, and even video games. The tools may change, but the teachings remain strong. Ceremonies still happen, some in private, some shared with the wider community. The medicine people, or Hatawi, continue to practice the ancient chants. Healing still happens through prayer and sand painting. And during certain times of year, people gather for ceremonies that last all night, singing the old songs under the same stars their ancestors once watched. The hogan, once the only kind of home, is still built by many families, either as a primary house or as a sacred space. Its round shape and east-facing door remain deeply symbolic. And though many now live in more modern structures, the hogan still holds a special place, a connection to the earth, the sun, and the flow of time. Art and craft are still a living tradition, too. Navajo weaving is known around the world. Strong, intricate, full of story. Each design tells something. Each thread has intention. Rugs are still woven by hand, the same way grandmothers and great-grandmothers did, often with wool from sheep that graze just outside the window. Silver jewelry, turquoise inlays, pottery, basketry. These aren't just souvenirs. They're expressions of identity, carried in the hands, passed from one heart to another. And music, it's growing, too. While the sacred chants remain sacred, many Navajo musicians blend traditional themes with modern sounds. Some perform hip-hop in Bizod. Others write folk songs about land and memory. It's not about choosing old or new. It's about weaving them together. The Navajo Nation also governs itself. It has its own council, laws, and police. It faces many challenges, like access to clean water, healthcare, and education. But it also has strength. Many are becoming doctors, teachers, engineers, artists, and leaders. They bring their culture with them into every field, helping the world understand that being Navajo isn't something from the past. It's something ongoing. Young people are learning how to walk in two worlds, the modern and the traditional, and they redoing it with pride. Some raise sheep and play basketball. Some lead ceremonies and study computer science. Some live in cities and return home for family gatherings and ceremonies in the Canyonlands. There is no single way to be Navajo, but the heartbeat behind it all stays the same. And still, at the center of all of it, is the land that holds the stories. The land that shaped the language. The land where the people emerged after 4 worlds. The land that was walked during times of sorrow and returned to with strength. The land where the sun still rises over the mountains and warms the Hagen doors. The land is not just home. It is memory. It is teacher. It is relative. So, even as the world changes and life gets busy and modern and noisy, the old ways continue quietly, firmly, in morning prayers, in meals cooked over open fire, in footsteps across soft earth, in the way elders speak and the way young people listen. Navajo culture is not frozen in time. It moves forward like a river. Not fast, but steady. Not loud, but strong. It bends, it flows, and it always remembers where it started. So now, as we come to the end of this long, gentle journey, let yourself rest with that thought. That culture can grow and still remain rooted. That people can face storms and still rise again. That tradition can walk hand in hand with change. And that, even now, the sacred mountains stand, holding space for every story, every prayer, every dream. They are still here, still singing, still weaving, still walking in beauty, and the story continues.